Hello. Today's video is going to feature my favorite theorist in the whole wide world, Zygmunt Bauman, and I'll talk about him focusing mainly on the first three chapters of the Individualized Society because those were the chapters assigned for this week. I'm going to share screen though with some quick class information stuff. Okay, so now you can see my internet browser. Excuse me. I just wanted to show, because I send announcements pretty frequently with this being an asynchronous class, I wanted to show something kind of important. If you click on your eLearn, this should be true for everyone. If you're on a computer, on your phone, it's probably something similar. I can help troubleshoot. Uh, Over here, click Account, Notifications, and then you can choose settings for account or the class. So I'd be glad if you chose just our class here, Social 168 Summer B. And then for notifications, make sure here announcements, you get notified, because this way you'll hear if I send an announcement, you'll get an email or notified however you choose. It's up to you if you want to get updated when I like upload videos or anything. So files or course content. You could also turn on notifications for that. That's pretty important because this is an asynchronous class. Some folks during the questionnaire did ask for some Zoom meetings, and I'd be glad to do something optional. However, because it is an asynchronous class, it needs to be available to the whole class whenever they want. That's the policy for an asynchronous class. So if you join the Zoom for like a class meeting, I think I would be required to record it and upload it to eLearn. So if you're comfortable with that, obviously you don't need to turn your camera on or anything. You can just keep your camera off, maintain your privacy, and the conversation we have though would be shared with the class on eLearn. Not on YouTube. I would share that on eLearn because it would feature other people. And I got help from a librarian. I can figure out how to post videos on Yuja now on eLearn. So I'm gonna have the view be the slideshow. Hopefully, yes, this is all working. So more questionnaire responses. People like doing the autobiographical poster. That's excellent. If on the questionnaire you on this week's Google form, excuse me, if you selected yes or anything's fine by me, etc., you I will include your autobiographical poster into one big PDF. It'll be like a kind of like a yearbook or something. You can flip through that, get to know the people you're interacting with on perusal while reading Jane Addams, and then also in your discussion section, the written dialogues with TA Stephanie. So yeah, it's a huge help for people to get to know each other. And also, you'll see me summarizing some of my key takeaways from the reading, but in this video. But if you're limited just to my own perspective, you're not going to learn nearly as much as if you open your eyes to everyone's perspectives, especially in the perusal reading of democracy and social ethics. People have been having great comments, asking great questions. Really, really happy to see what people have been doing so far on that. So please open your heart to learning from your peers. It's a huge part of learning, especially in a sociological theory class. As I mentioned, maybe in some direct messages to people, that's also something that Jane Addams values so highly. We talked about in the last mini lecture, is that Jane Addams values vantage points. So everybody's perspective matters. So that also, the poster, that's part of it. Hearing other people's perspectives, seeing where they are in life. So yes, the texts are tricky. It's okay to not understand parts of the text and read, add comments, and then relax. You have your own time. You can schedule your days as you want. You don't need to commute to class. So hopefully this class adds momentum to your life. But yeah, the big thing that requires a lot of effort is looking at the words on the page and trying to make sense of it because it can be tough. Those of you who have the paper copy of the Individualized Society, I'm so happy for you. Hope you are making use of that. And we're pretty split in terms of what we're looking forward to. I love that people added all the above. That's so cool. And it looks like most popular was new concepts from sociological theories. You're in the right place for that. Reflecting on our own life paths, also perfect place for that. And refining personal philosophies. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Glad that people have things to think about. So now I'll talk about Zygmunt Bauman quite quickly. There's more slides. The slides are already posted on eLearn. Quiz 1 is posted too, and you can look at the slides. It's open book. You can take the quiz a second time too to improve your score. So the goal is formative assessment to help you learn stuff as you're being quizzed on it. This is not the type of quiz that you study for and then get tested in a way that like punishes you for not knowing it. So quick biography. Zygmunt Bauman was born in Poland in 1925, and in his teenage years, World War II occurred, and actually prior to that, the Nazis invaded Poland, or as part of the beginning of World War II. I don't know how it technically began versus what we remember in history books, but he faced the Nazis, and he was a Jew, and it was scary, and he was helped by a lot of people kind of hiding him and his family, helping them escape to Russia. Then he joined the Russian army, the Red Army, at the age of 18. So he was in a communist society in Russia, even after the war, and then kind of became a bureaucrat in the army, then moved back to Poland and continued to be a bureaucrat working in government, this kind of public official. And then he went into academia, earning a master's degree in philosophy and social science, so basically sociology or sociological theory, from the University of Warsaw. This is in Poland. But then he leaves Poland, goes to London to study at the School of Economics, and then went back to Poland, practiced more sociology. But then in the late 60s had to flee Poland because there's another kind of purge of Jews, sadly, in Poland. And he moved to the UK again. He actually had a stint at UC Berkeley, I think, at our sister school for one quarter, and then got a better job at the University of Leeds in the UK. And he's been writing a ton of books like this, basically every year for 40 years, more than 40 years. Then he died right after Trump got elected in 2016. And yeah, so he's a really cool theorist because he's sort of escaped this persecution right at the beginning of his life, and then lived in a communist society. And then when he was living in the UK, of course, he was living in a capitalist society. So he has lots of vantage points, to use Jane Addams' term, that is really helpful for forming theories of modernity, postmodernity, and thinking about globalization and how society functions at a global level. So this book, though, The Individualized Society, is about individualization. He says in chapter 2 or chapter 3 that the definition of individualization does change throughout different historical epochs, and that's something to keep in mind, that the definition's a bit not fixed in place. You have to contextualize it with historical information. On this slide, though, is my best rough attempt at defining it. Individualized society is one where people have to tackle life's challenges on their own, utilize their own unique traits to maximize their odds of success as individuals. So if you're describing a society becoming more individualized, that's individualization. It's the societal level thing, not just on each single person, each individual. And to describe on the societal level, we could say individualization is a shift from a society where people's roles and identities were largely determined by their social context to one where individuals must actively shape their own lives, often under conditions of uncertainty and risk. And as we'll see soon, Bauman does think about how the conditions of uncertainty are sort of set by the most powerful people who have the most decision-making power, and uncertainty kind of works as a tool to maintain power too. When things are not guaranteed as rights or through public infrastructure, this precarity and uncertainty leads to individualization. So chapter 1 of this book Zygmunt writes about how capitalists used to depend on workers in a particular locale, bringing up Henry Ford and the early automotive factories as an example. But because companies increasingly contract out work of production in the contemporary era, this book was written in 2001, capital is no longer beholden to any particular locale's labor force. So it's harder for workers to go on strike and ask for higher benefits or better wages, or to form social movements, because power is, he says the term extraterritorial, which means it's not rooted in place in any one territory, but power, like capital, power is capital, basically. It's money. It can float around the world as it pleases. It's not like there's immigrations and customs enforcement for money. That's just for stopping people from going places. Um, Describing solid modernity, and we'll talk about his key terms of solid modernity and liquid modernity pretty soon. But he writes on page 23, as long as the staying in each other's company was assumed to last, the rules of that togetherness were the focus of intense negotiations. So he's writing about workers and business people having to negotiate with each other and have somewhat even footing in that negotiation because they're stuck in the same place, at least geographically. But with globalization, with solid modernity melting into liquid modernity, capital can float around the world instead of staying in one place. Another quote, working life is saturated with uncertainty. And in an individualized society, people forget about dreams of universal justice. So they're kind of just trying to solve their own private troubles on their own. So these videos, I'm not going to show in this video because I think then this video won't get uploaded and YouTube will say, no, you're copying someone else's video. But on the left, you see this is solid modernity. This is a Ford assembly line. The workers have that job for their whole career. It's very monotonous. They're doing the same thing, but on the bright side, it's stable. They have job security. They make a living. They can support their family. That's solid modernity. On the other hand, here's liquid modernity, and it's a HR video, human resources, from the medical billing company Epic. And in one of the chapters, Bauman quotes another sociologist as saying that in the present day, power holders, instead of solving problems, actually create problems for workers to solve. And this company, Epic, which is a medical billing company, they exist by creating headaches for people, by making billing more complicated and thus more profitable for hospitals and insurance companies. And ultimately, their existence really harms regular people, consumers, workers around the globe. It's a global company. So this company extracts money through little red tape rules and and different definitions of medical procedures, or part, when the doctor does one thing during your appointment, another $200, and the doctor's not getting that money. It's just filling the pockets of insurance companies and hospitals by denying patients the care they need. So in this, sorry for bashing Epic. I hope none of you have relatives or friends who work for that company, but I actually do have dear friends who work for Epic, and it's fine. This video, you can see it's like for onboarding. It's a message for people considering working at Epic, and they are saying a whole lot of gibberish to my ears. It's just sort of highly individualized. It's very ambiguous what these people are actually doing, but you have to get the job done and be willing to meet a lot of people and hear what they want. So that's liquid modernity, this ambiguity, this uncertainty, and that's a good job. You're being a project manager for this company that's basically preying on ordinary people, trying to extract as much money as possible. So That's a liquid modern corporation, and it's a huge problem in our society. It gets in the way of having things that actually help people, as we can see in Jane Addams's example with the Whole House, like something like that, where people have a place to stay, their needs are met, and they can form community and social bonds and dream of a better world. So it's a nice contrast. Neither of these images is perfect. You know, the working life of Americans and people around the globe uh, is still progressing towards a point where we can just be making art and growing our own fruits and vegetables and taking care of farm animals instead of them living in boxes like in a factory farm. So there's so many more utopian ways of having a working life, and for workers as a society to run things. So this contrast of solid modernity and liquid modernity is just a key term that from Zygmunt Bauman's theoretical perspective to think about. And that's oh no, 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 no. Okay. Chapter 2, Local Orders, Global Chaos. And I know I'm way beyond my 7-minute limit of videos, but at the beginning of the course, I think this is just a sad reality, but they'll get a lot faster when I'm reviewing people like Marx and Weber and Durkheim and these classical sociological theorists who I can kind of just tell you their concepts, and there'll be the PowerPoint slides you can refer to as well. And then you can start to compare those concepts and the types of things they're talking about with Jane Addams and Zygmunt Bauman, who we're going to continue to read all month long. So chapter 2, Local Orders, Global Chaos. He writes about order as manipulating probabilities so you know what to expect. So it gives you security, and security is something that is relevant to chapter 3 as well. A good quote from page 36, precariousness is today the major building block of global power hierarchy and the main technique of social control. So it's not knowing if you have health insurance. It's not knowing if you can pay rent at the end of the year. It's not knowing if you'll have a good enough car or if you'll be able to make it on time to the places you need to be because you're spread thin. So precariousness really keeps working people stuck focusing on their own personal problems. Interpersonal connections become more short-term in a globalized, fluid, modern world. You move around, you switch jobs more frequently. It's harder to keep in touch with old friends nowadays than if you're living in a neighborhood, even in a big city, but near the same families, same people for decades, then you really form deep ties. In globalization, multinational corporations and ultra-rich individuals hold on to real power, and this power is unbounded by any local authority or tax structure. Those are my takeaways from chapter 2, but of course, I hope you in your reading notes come up with your own takeaways because I am just one person. Chapter 3, Freedom and Security, the unfinished story of a tempestuous union. Freedom and security is one of the hugest, most important tensions that Zygmunt Bauman writes about. Oftentimes to get more security, you have to sacrifice a little bit of freedom. And on the other hand, to get more freedom, you have to sacrifice a bit of security. For example, if you want to live in an apartment complex with a gate around it and a code, then you lose a bit of the freedom to come and go because you have to enter the code for that gate and come and go, and there's a restricted space, but you get more security. Whereas if you enjoy being able to go into like a big public fresh market, you get the freedom of shopping around all these different stalls, but you might not have the security of being able to depend on this really regimented, ordered supermarket with all the same products all the time. So yeah, there's tension between freedom and security. It'd be cool to come up with examples of different instances where that tension surfaces from your own life. In this chapter, chapter 3, he explores individualization some more and talks about its evolving meaning with history. A good quote from page 50, he writes, the yawning gap between the right of self-assertion and the capacity to control the social settings which renders such self-assertion feasible or unrealistic seems to be the main contradiction of second modernity. One, and he's kind of referring to liquid modernity as second modernity. One that through trial and error, critical reflection, and bold experimentation, we would need to collectively learn to collectively tackle. So there's this individualized self-assertion that people strive for. You want to be able to be your true self and do what you want in your life, but the circumstances that allow for you to reach your goals really are outside of your own control most of the time. And the way to control that is through collective action. And that's the tricky part, is that we're kind of incentivized to focus on ourselves in the world we live in now. But the solutions to our private problems are actually only solvable. The solutions to fixing the conditions that cause our private problems are only solvable through collective actions. And we're seeing a bit of this with some more momentum with the labor movement, but it's not just labor unions. It's going to have to be church groups. It's going to have to be sporting clubs and fandoms of different kinds of art and other sensational things that we care about in life. Whatever causes people to connect, in order to collectively tackle common problems, people need to address the highly concentrated authoritarian power that exists in our economy at a global level. So Zygmunt Bauman is diagnosing this problem, and the solution he suggests comes from collective action. Jane Addams will help us learn about how to work together with people, even if we disagree with them and have different life experiences than them. And hopefully this class also gives us some exercise and learning from each other's different perspectives, and at least making sense of these tricky readings together. We're not trying to save the whole world together necessarily. And then Bauman introduces at the end of this chapter the separation of power and politics, which is another key theme from his writing. And there's a ton of other slides in this presentation, but I've been talking for too long. Please ask me any questions. I know I'm already reading a little bit quickly, but that's what we have talking about these ideas from the first 3 chapters of The Individualized Society. And I have so much fun talking about this book. So if it helps people, you like having a bit of my key takeaways, I will try over the weekend to put together videos for the week 2 Zygmunt Bauman readings. And then seeing each other's perusal comments is really, really helpful, I think, for the Jane Addams readings. So that's my plan for the weekend. I will also get started introducing some more classical sociological theorists, some of the big names maybe you've heard about in your Soc 3 class. I don't know which one it is that you learn a little bit about those people. Thanks so much for listening to this, and stay tuned.